hold on. So let's, there could be more than one. So what's one of them we're saying? Nexus is one. Okay. Any other ones on that list support it? Very good. He got that one. He works for me though, that's why he knows that. So, yes, the Motorola Droid Bionic does support encryption. And as does the Zoom tablet. So, Android, Google, in any OS above 3.0 offers native hardware encryption. Prior to 3.0, it was up to the vendor. Motorola released a sequence of devices that they would call their business enterprise ready devices, used what they call their Motorola EDM APIs, and they had encryption capabilities on the device. So you could go to the menu setting and encrypt both the SD card and the device itself. And if you were an application that read their APIs, you could actually see the status of the encryption. So that was a little bit of a trick question when I mentioned in the earlier session that encryption was only in 3x and above. From Google's side of this, some vendors, Motorola being the main one, did implement on a subset of their devices encryption capabilities. Okay.
Samsung S2 is I.
The Galaxy S2, yeah, through their APIs apparently you can do it. I've never done it, but apparently through their APIs they have some encryption capabilities. Correct. Yes. But in this case, it was the Samsung Galaxy S, which is actually the Google reference device. It's not Samsung's own coded device. So, okay. So the good news, Android 3X and 4X natively support device-level encryption. Some pre-3X devices have it as well, Motorola on many devices, Samsung on a few. There are third-party email apps that support encryption. So there's a popular email app in the marketplace called Touchdown by NitroDesk. They support encryption. Okay? So if your Exchange server requires encryption, it will automatically encrypt your data, which is good. The apps can be programmed to encrypt its data. Any smart developer is going to encrypt his database and his data at his application level. Third-party apps can read the status of encryption on the device using the Google APIs or native APIs available from the vendor. Okay? But the big thing to take around here, guys, is all new phones that should come out soon, right? Because I really hope that the vendors, as of this summer, aren't going to be releasing any pre-ice cream sandwich phones. All phones should support some sort of encryption, whether just device level or device level and SD card. Okay?
Sure. So when you say encryption, is it API support for encryption, or is it like it says an option which says
anything 3.0 and higher that I've seen, there's a default option in the settings for a user to encrypt it.
So any data gets automatically encrypted?
Yes, if you turn on encryption on the device, right? If the user encrypts the tablet, what Google does is Google goes in and resets the tablet, makes you enter a passcode. You have to have a passcode with encryption. And then it reboots. It takes like anywhere from a half hour to 2 hours to encrypt the tablet or the device, and then comes back. Samsung's or Motorola's work a bit better. Motorola's on their earlier devices is very quick. It encrypts a lot faster. But same basic thing, requires a passcode. But once the device is encrypted, this is true of Google's encryption. Google's encryption is not reversible. If it's the Android default encryption, the only way to unencrypt your tablet is to do a hard reset or a full wipe. That removes the encryption. Motorola, theirs can be undone without reboot setting the tablet. It's an option in the settings menu. Again, that's their own implementation of the encryption. Okay? But Google's, from every device I've seen up till now, once you enable it, it's encrypted. There's no option to unencrypt. It says if you need to unencrypt your device, please do a full factory wipe reset.
So basically when there's a file transfer done, SD card from the device to, let's say, automatically the file that's transported is actually the decrypted file.
Correct. Yes.
So the decryption happens automatically.
In the background, yes. That's my understanding of how it works.
That's what I assume.
Yeah, because if you send an email attach and attach a file from your device, it gets decrypted when it gets attached.
Only when the SD card is plugged out of the device, when the proper password is not given, only then the file cannot be retrieved in the
correct. Correct. And what happens is once you encrypt using Google's encryption, every time you boot the device, you'll get an initial screen with the little Android dude, and he's got like a lock in the middle of his body, and you have to enter your passcode there once to unlock the encryption, to decrypt the OS, and to boot it. And then when you get to the main boot up screen, you have to enter your passcode again.
There are two passcodes.
You have to enter your passcode twice on
the
device.
same one, they are two different ones.
No, it actually uses the one that you use to lock your tablet. So if you change it on your regular tablet through the OS, it'll change the encryption one too, so you don't have to remember it yet. Yeah, and they actually somehow rewrite that as the unlock code or whatever. I'm not quite sure how they do that. I always wonder if you're encrypted at the hardware level, how are they so quickly applying the new one? But I'm not an encryption expert to that degree to really know how they do it. But I do know it's the same passcode used to unlock the tablet that's used to unlock the encryption every time you reboot it. Okay. Okay, so, and not so good. Native Android does not support SD card encryption. We talked about that earlier. Google discourages SD card slots. Doesn't get them most places. Most vendors are still including them. That's one of those things people like about Android over iOS is that I can buy a device with less, internal memory to save $100 and just put an SD card in cheaper later, right? I mean, a 16 gigabyte to a 32 gigabyte device, the vendor will charge you $100. You can get a 16 gigabyte micro SD card for $20, right? I just saved $80. Plus I can swap multiple ones in if I need them. Native Android encryption, we just talked about this, can only be undone by resetting the device. Okay?
But resetting also should not right. Resetting will.
By reset, I mean wiping. I'm sorry, I should be clear. I mean doing a factory data wipe on a device.
In that, I don't know how that, because the data is already stored on the SD card in encrypted form.
Right.
And the factory reset erases the password. Then the user have to connect to the account in order to decrypt it, right? So unless.
Well, you're actually wiping out all that encrypted data. So the OS is encrypted as well when you use the Google native encryption. So when you wipe the device, it's resetting. Now, if you have the data encrypted on the SD card and the SD card doesn't get wiped,
Yes.
it probably won't be readable
Even
anymore.
it's not readable.
It won't be readable because the encryption is going to be different the next time it does it right. That won't be readable. Agreed. But some devices don't support encryption of SD cards, which is a concern a lot of companies have.
But probably if they're after a wiped out, after wipeout, when you're connecting to the same account, Google account,
Yes.
then probably the decryption is possible.
Yes, if you've backed up your app, that's a good question. If you backed up your applications or whatever to Google, or you backed up any data, is it backed up in encrypted form? I do not know the answer to that. I haven't
For
tried.
some reason, it must be encrypted on their side, and then
Yeah.
do a sync.
If you restore, it comes down, yeah. But whether or not they'll say we won't restore this
For some
because.
reason, genuinely you could want to do a wipeout. Right?
Yeah, but let's keep in mind that the primary reason they're doing it is that someone steals your tablet, right? You can't get in the data or whatever to protect it that way. Once it's uploaded to the Google servers, they'll protect it there, but if you reset your tablet and want to bring your documents back, I'm sure they send them out unencrypted. But if you re-encrypted your tablet after wiping it, then it'll re-encrypt before it stores them on the tablet. Yep. Okay. Let's see, Motorola added support for encryption prior to 3X devices on some of their models. Not all their phones, more their business phones had that support. And you were able to encrypt and decrypt without resetting the device, which was nice. Okay, mystery number 5, which best describes your current personal or corporate device? Anybody know what any of this means? I have Sense, I'm a Blur, I'm a Touch Whiz, I'm just plain vanilla.
HTC Test, Motor Blur.
Yes. HTC what?
HTC Sense.
Yes, yep,
Motor Blur.
yep,
Samsung TouchWiz.
very good. Yep.
And then
So what these are these bring us to our next topic or mystery, which is what we call vendor customizations, right? So basically, being an open source OS, vendors are able to add their own flair to the devices, right? This is one of the things that make them unique. The most popular way is by modifying the front end or home screen behavior. Samsung has TouchWiz. Motorola has Moto Blur, although they tuned it back deeply. I think they might be bringing a new version of it with their 4.0 devices. HTC has Sense. And when you have no customizations, it's often referred to as vanilla Android, right? So Google reference devices like the Galaxy Nexus, the Nexus S, the Motorola Zoom. So the Motorola Zoom was made by Motorola, right? But it doesn't have any Motorola effects on it. When Google said, we'll let you make the reference device for Android 3.0, it had to be plain vanilla, right? So if you have no customizations, it's vanilla. So some of the features that can be offered by these custom interfaces, you can get additional home screens. I believe the default Google OS only allows 3 or 5 home screens. But if you have HTC or someone, you can get like 7 or 10 or unlimited, right? Customizable docks, so you can customize what appears at the bottom. You can have altered app scrolling behavior. One of the common things, you'll pick up one Android phone, and when you go to the application screen, the default Android behavior was always up to down. And then the vendors started switching it to be left to right. And I think maybe on the new OSs, Google might use left to right too now. So that's one example of something Mary's vendor customization. Custom widgets, the vendor has their own widgets they design. Additional applications, this is common. I put my Samsung apps or my HTC apps, Office viewers, etc. And shortcuts to common settings, so you may be able to have a little toolbar where you can enable and disable radios and all. Just different ways for the vendor to kind of make the device more usable and add a little bit of flair to it. Okay. What does it all mean? Not much from an overall perspective. It's kind of cool for the end users, personal preference, to see what they like. Vendors appear to be cutting back on these customizations with iOS. since Android's default interface is improved, but I will say HTC did Sense 4.0, and I really like what they've done with it. So HTC released Sense 4.0 on the HTC One series. It takes some of the best features of their previous versions, cuts back a few things that weren't as liked or moved, and adds some new stuff. So it's pretty good as well. Okay. All right. Poll question 6. We'll do a shirt for this one. Who hasn't got a shirt and wants to tell me what I can never pronounce this right. Thank you, Cyanogemod. Who wants to tell me what Cyanogemod is? Who doesn't work for me? We're working this time.
I don't know. Okay, sir.
Anyone?
Custom firmware developer for Android.
All right, we'll give both a shirt. All right, you both get a shirt. You answer slightly faster, gray or white? Gray? Gray? Okay. So, yes, CyanogenMod is a custom firmware developed for Android devices. It's not a new dating website for Android lovers, though I think there's one out there if we look, It's compatible with 60 plus smartphones and tablets. It replaces the default firmware on the device and adds support for many features not present in Android. It's kind of funny, like if you want to have OpenVPN on your Android device, a custom firmware will give it to you, but the default Google one won't. Right? Overclocking, everyone loves overclocking their devices. So there's a lot of cool things. So are custom ROMs good or bad? Well, they're a unique feature.
If we upgrade the OS with CyanogenMod, and later when we get the official upgrade from Samsung or some other vendor,
Yes.
can we upgrade to that?
You have to first flash back to the original vendor ROM.
So I have to keep a backup.
Yes, or download a backup from the internet, right? Yes. So so a lot of people use custom ROMs to upgrade early. Everyone was running Ice Cream Sandwich months before the first non-Google Ice Cream Sandwich device came out, right? Heck, people were running Ice Cream Sandwich before the first Google Ice Cream Sandwich device came out. They were running the early builds, right? I think the first actual version of Ice Cream Sandwich that came out was like 4.01 because Google found some bugs and fixed it before they pushed it. But people were running 4.00 because Google released the source code to developers. So they converted it, ran it, added it to CyanogenMod or other programs and used it. Right? So what you're looking at is this is all possible because of the open source nature of Android. There's no such concept of custom ROMs on iOS devices. There's ways to customize it a little bit, but the base OS is iOS always, as far as Apple's definition of it. You have to have root access and an unlocked bootloader to apply it, although you can remove a root access once you install the custom ROM. So you can have a custom ROM with a locked, non-rooted device. That's can be kind of tricky if you're monitoring from a security perspective. So why did people do it? Well, one top reason was they wanted to remove bloatware. They wanted to get rid of all those apps that the vendors and the providers were putting on the phone that you can't remove, right? They wanted to add features that weren't available. They wanted to make applications a default part of the system. They wanted to enhance the customability of the OS interface. Some of the things these guys do with these custom ROMs, one guy provided a custom ROM that entirely looks like the Windows 7 interface, right? I'm a fan, I like the Windows 7 phone interface. I'm not going to change my Android to look like it, but one guy did. He made an Android UI that works just like Windows Phone, with tiles and all, okay? Upgrade to base Android version on devices and vendors have or will not upgrade, right? So, guy's impatient. I want Ice Cream Sandwich now. So he gets a build customized with his phone. Usually the early builds are very buggy or missing features and all, but some of the later ones become pretty stable and have just about everything in it. So you can do that. It gives you the ability to do that. As you mentioned, if the vendor eventually releases the upgrade and you want theirs, you generally have to flash back to what they call the stock ROM, the ROM that's shipped originally with that device, which can be tricky because certain models, depending on regions and all, there can be dozens of different ways to get it. So you want to make sure you have the right stock ROM. You have to flash back to it, and then you can do upgrades by the vendor's normal channel. Okay? And a lot of people do that, right? They just do it so temporary. Some of the benefits, older devices can have their life extended, right? Maybe I want to take an older device and go ahead and, and upgrade it from 2.1 to 2.2. So I can take advantage of some of the newer features, right? You can't always, because if the specs on the device are bad, you might not get a good ROM, a good performing ROM. But a lot of things that people do is they can take ROMs and hack out some of the features to make it perform better on earlier devices. So there's a lot of customization and flexibility there. The community around this stuff is amazing. It blows you away how much these guys do, and they're not getting paid for it, right? It's all free. Stuff that they're giving out, okay? So concerns, you need to make sure you're using a reputable ROM. The warranty concerns from manufacturer. A lot of manufacturers, once you unlock it or put a custom ROM or whatever, they'll no longer support you under warranty.